Good evening. I sit here shocked, disappointed, and disgusted. You and your staff hold a legal position of trust and power in relation to the students, the minors who attend your schools. Tonight, I will signal that there has been an abuse and breach of power on the part of your staff and a betrayal of parental and public trust. I did not expect to find these books in our schools. Please note, if you have been told that these books are cleared by regulators, you are mistaken. The publishing industry in Canada is self-regulated. Although it may be hard for you to digest and calls for decorum might suggest that these graphic, inappropriate sexual descriptions not be read in chambers, I must insist that you and the rest of our community hear the materials that Prairie Rose School Division is making available to our children. You have a lineup of delegations tonight, representatives from organizations outside of our community, organizations with deep pockets and political influence. But all of these words, both theirs and mine, are meaningless without the context of what our children are being exposed to. I must insist that you not interrupt me as I read selections from the books found on the book stacks of our schools. From nonfiction material available in our schools, quote, "The benefits of sex apps are obvious, quick, easy, and uncomplicated sex." Quote, "Grindr gets what you want quickly." Quote, "Porn is fine and fun." Quote, "Some women like having stuff poked up their anus." Quote, "That clitoris really does like to be licked." Quote, "Pay some money to enter the sauna and have some random sex." By no means by comprehensive list, topics also include sex meets, bars and clubs, boys on boys sex, toys, dildos, vibrators and strap-ons, handies, how to argue with Muslims, sex parties, rimming, orgies, eating poop, and peeing on people in a sexy way. Giving advice to children on how to have random sex with adults through adult sex apps. Encouraging child-on-child sex acts. Recommending that kids enter 18-plus venues and participate in random sex. Advocating for objects to be poked into children's sexual organs? I have to assume that you didn't know this was in your libraries. From poetry available for our minors in your schools. Quote, "The first boy that kissed me held my shoulders down like the handlebars of the first bicycle he ever rode. I was 5. Quote, "The therapist placed the doll in front of you. It is the size of the girls your uncle likes touching. You point to the spot between its legs, the one he fingered out of you like a confession." Quote, "You have been taught that your legs are a pit stop for men." Quote, "You plowed into me with 2 fingers and I am mostly shocked." Quote, "Your knees pried open by cousins and uncles." Page after page after page of graphic child rape, sexual abuse, and incest. I sit here hoping that your librarians were simply unaware. Before recently, I wouldn't have considered that anyone would try teaching a child to masturbate. I thought that this would be the act of a groomer, a pedophile. I assumed the general understanding was that teaching a child to masturbate was either illegal or child abuse. Upon further investigation, it turns out it is both. Section 152 of the Criminal Code, titled Invitation to Sexual Touching, states that every person who counsels a person to touch with a part of the body or with an object the body of any person under the age of 16 years is guilty of an indictable offense. Yet, from this division's non-fiction section, quote, "Blowies, oral sex is popping another dude's peen in your mouth, indeed, or popping yours in his. It's more about sucking. It's more about sliding your mouth up and down his cock." At this point, only delusion can contest that the materials are teaching sexual touching to minors, a crime in Canada as stated by Section 152 of the Criminal Code of Canada. And before recently, I did not know exactly how child pornography was defined. You might assume that it would have had to be a video or photograph. Did you know that it is also written material? Child pornography is detailed written description of children performing sexual acts. Section 163 of the Criminal Code of Canada defines child pornography as any written material whose dominant characteristic is the description of sexual activity with a person under the age of 18 years or the written depiction of underage individuals engaged in explicit sexual behavior. From memoir available for our students. Quote, he sat on my back, he pounded my skull into the brick. Quote, you're the worst bitch I've ever done this to. Quote, he began to knead his fist against the opening of my vagina, inserted his fingers into it 3 or 4 at a time. Something tore. I began to bleed there. I was wet now. It made him excited. He was intrigued, and he worked his whole fist up into my vagina and pumped it. I went into my brain. A traumatizing rape. Pages of graphic, explicit, violent sexual acts. Quote, he made noises and rammed it in. Rammed it and rammed it. Is this the freedom of expression that some of you in this room will fight for tonight? The Manitoba School Boards Association defines child sexual abuse material as, quote, actual but also fictitious written depictions of child sexual abuse, also known as child pornography. What is this trash doing in our schools? Persons in positions of trust and authority can never counsel a young person to touch anyone, not themselves or others, in a sexual way. Why not? Because that would be a sexual exploitation as defined by Section 153 of the Criminal Code of Canada. And in the absence of evidence-based research, we have the findings of independent observational studies. Over and over again, they demonstrate that the greater the degree of sexual explicitness, especially in the absence of a parent, the greater the detriment to the child. These laws were put in place to protect vulnerable minors from grooming and sexual abuses. No policy on freedom of speech, no education policy can override the Criminal Code of Canada. I expect that every child in Canada has the same right of safety under the law, and that no child should be excluded from this protection. And I would fiercely advocate that the children in our school division be granted the same standard of safety. You, the trustees, and your staff are entrusted with the safety of our children while they are in your buildings. You have been given the authority to create policy within the division. Tonight, I am asking you, the Board of Trustees of the Prairie Rose School Division, to create a policy that aligns with Sections 152 and 163 of the Criminal Code of Canada, so that no child in any of our schools is exposed to materials that put them at risk. For those elected into positions of authority and tasked with the safety of our children, this should not be an unreasonable request. Whatever those in the room choose, name-calling and attempts to smear my reputation may be a distraction and fodder for mass media, but you will not be able to hide the content of these books forever. Tonight, please remember who elected you into these positions and who you represent. Your stakeholders are the members of this community, not the outside organizations who have managed to push their way into this meeting. I am a mother, a community member, a stakeholder in this school division, and my children are under your care while they are in your buildings. So I will leave you with these words as you contemplate what has gone wrong and what you will do about it. Quote, he guts her with his fingers like he's scraping the inside of a cantaloupe clean.
Thank you. I will bring up again that I had said there'll be no personal recordings at this meeting. The meeting will be recorded on the website. So if you are going to continue to personally record, you'll be asked to leave. Trustee Gear, do you have questions for clarification? Trustee McNair?
No.
Trustee LaChance?
No, thank you.
Trustee Hoffer?
Yes, I can.
He'll get you. It's on.
Was the wording exactly the way you read the quotes from the books that you found in the school library?
Yes, those were exact quotes.
Thank you.
Trustee Foote? Trustee Mellett? Okay, I wanted to clarify. I think Trustee Hoffer asked if they were from books in the library at the school.
Yes, they're from the school here.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.